Welcome to the Shergroup podcast, where we share ideas on how to help businesses grow and prosper in the online world. Join host, Chief Shergroup Claire Sambrook as she discusses her digital journey and how Shergroup is helping thousands to keep their business flowing and growing. Here on the Shergroup podcast.
Hello everyone, it's Claire from Shergroup, and this is our Shergroup on the Sofa segment where we're just chatting to friends of Shergroup about their businesses, their role in business, what they think about, how their business is developing, and really to show you that we deal with a diverse range of people and come across them in our networks, which is fantastic for us as we continue to grow our community. So I just want to give a short shout out today to my nephew Ross, who is our number one fan. So hi Rossi.
Hey Ross.
Hey, and David saying hello as well. So that's nice. And to anyone else, I think we've got Tiger over in the Philippines that is watching us consistently now. And I know some of the people in the UK and maybe the US are watching us as well. So thank you so much for joining in. Now, without further ado, I must introduce my very special guest today, David Jefferies. Hey, David.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me on the virtual sofa today. I know we're not sitting on the sofa exactly, but the whole idea is that everybody relaxes and we can just chat about business. And I'm fascinated to hear about your business and how you've built that up. And I also want to ask you about Doctor Who. So you're not going to escape from that very small point. I know that wasn't in your questions, but I've been a Whovian since I was 4 years old. So I'm going to ask you about that.
Oh, please do.
Okay. But before we get into that, now you are a fraud expert. And so I want to ask you, now this is all to do with financial crime prevention. That is pretty deep, isn't it? So tell me, how the heck did you get into that?
Well, as a career, it actually chose me.
Right.
which is a strange thing. Now, I was working in the public sector for many years, actually, and at the time, and we were dealing with some pretty high-level and substantial budgets in the tens of millions, basically. And fraud, as it was called then, wasn't something that anyone had paid any attention to, surprisingly enough. So one day we got a memo comes down and says, oh, by the way, you guys, we're going to do something about fraud, and it's going to be you doing it. So we were like, okay, quite the wrong people to ask, really, in hindsight. Why give the job of protecting finances to the people that control the finances? We couldn't actually write checks, but we has been controls of finances, because it all has to be voted for in Parliament, and it's all budgeted, and it's all a case of overmanning being a good thing. So things really just snowballed from there. And being the civil service, as soon as you get told you're doing something, first thing they do is send you on a lot of courses. And it started with basic accounting and worked its way up. Ended up doing a master's in fraud management and then a doctorate in criminal justice studies. So I made a successful career out of crime, really, I suppose. And
on the right side
at the time.
On the right side of crime.
Yes, on the right side, absolutely. We didn't realise it at the time, but of course, fraud prevention has become something of a growth industry. So it's resulted in a lot of changes to the law, for instance, how we undertake business, and even how we view our political system. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
That is a massive journey from where you started. It's funny how these careers seem to pick us, doesn't it? It's almost as the universe is picking us for the sorts of jobs that we end up in if we didn't know that already ourselves. So you've had this journey. How long has that journey been for you?
Oh gosh,
started.
You're really going to give my age away now, aren't I? Probably the early to mid, but we'll say the mid 80s till now, really.
Okay, so something similar 15. To myself, yeah. And I guess, like me, you've seen a lot of change since you first started working in computers, for starters. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head there, because although financial crime hasn't changed, crime doesn't change. It's the same crime. It's how it's facilitated that's changed. So let's take a fraud that everyone knows: advanced fee fraud, 419 scams. You know, I've got some money in an account. If you give me $100, you can have $10 million in, you know, this time next Thursday. Today, it's perpetrated through emails and texts. Prior to that, it would have been faxes. Before that, telephone calls, and before the telephone call, letters, and before that, literally by medieval messenger.
Really?
Yeah, advanced fee for frauds are the earliest recorded fraud, essentially. But the essential fraud's the same. Pay me something now, and I'll give you a reward later. It started off as the Spanish prisoner scam, and you know, half of his lordship's castle and his kingdom and his firstborn goat and everything, just for you know, a few hundred doubloons now, and right up to what we do today. But a fraud is a theft, but it's couched within a lie or with untruths. I tell you a lie, and as a result of that, you give me some money. That's what a fraud is.
Yeah.
And the challenge really is to respond to the method of perpetration. And you're absolutely right. What was once cash or a promissory note became a check, then a bank transfer, and now it's just as likely to involve a Bitcoin transfer.
I was going to say Bitcoin and cyber stuff must be on your radar now, right?
Absolutely. And of course, it's not always cash. It was, you know, as you know, sometimes it's information that people want that's going to lead to cash later.
Yeah.
They get the information fraudulently, and that's the fraud.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, you know, we see enough of these detective and kind of TV shows around kind of fraud and, you know, what's happening to try and manipulate the system, right? So I think even, you know, we're not experts in it, but we can understand and follow what you're saying. So what's been your biggest challenge in fighting this, you know, this crime?
I would say the attitude from those at the top, those in power. It was only, a month, 2 months ago, a prominent politician stood up and said, fraud's not something that ordinary people care about. So that's why we didn't include it on the crime stats we just released. Now, that really annoyed me because it's not only inherently untrue, it's perpetrating that ridiculous lie, that old lie that fraud is a victimless crime. It's not. That's never been the case. Financial crime destroys lives, and that's the serious part of my job, really, I guess. It obliterates life savings. It destroys jobs. It causes companies to go bust. It causes immense psychological and mental health problems on its victims. In short, fraud kills. And the biggest challenge, therefore, for myself and others in the industry is the battle to keep it a priority and to see it secure that adequate funding in terms of prevention, detection and sanction. That's the biggest challenge, I think, for me.
I mean, you say the people at the top kind of are dismissive of it or not taking it, you know, as seriously as possible. Is it just all too difficult for them to get hold of? Is that the apathy that you're seeing?
I think it's a two-edged sword. I think, and I'm going to be controversial here, yes, it's seen as being too complicated. It really isn't any more complicated than most crimes, really.
Yeah.
It's expensive to investigate for various reasons, and it can get a bit muddly. But I think also it's the old power corrupts thing adage, and I think people are scared of it because it's very easy to become a fraudster because you get swept along with things, you believe your own power. I mean, that's what my thesis was about. It was about how people get the power and they believe that they can do anything. And I think some people at the top are almost running scared, or they're actually already doing it. And they're frightened of being swept along with it, and because it's not understood. You know, murder is murder. You know, I'm not going to kill it. I don't go out in the morning to kill someone. I don't go out in the morning to defraud someone. But it's a lot easier to end the day having committed a fraud than it is having end the day committing a murder. They're very different routes to get into, and I think that's probably an issue.
Sounds like you've got a screenplay in there somewhere. You know, you've got a TV show or a film about some kind of, you know,
I think so.
deep fraud that you've unearthed. I'm sure you've got those sort of stories. Somebody ought to come and pick your brains about that. But what's What's the biggest positive change that you've seen in terms of how fraud is handled now, and what does that look like in 2020?
For me, the biggest change, certainly in the UK, which is where the majority of my work takes place, was the Fraud Act 2006. That was the first time fraud became a crime on the statute books in the UK.
Really, 2006? That's not.
There was a conspiracy to commit fraud. There was obtaining a pecuniary advantage by deception and various other charges, but an actual fraud, there wasn't even a legal definition, really. And it also legislated to make even the exposure of risk to fraud a crime.
Yeah.
Now, you don't actually have to have had a loss to secure a conviction, which is incredibly powerful. And it's so important because once the money's gone, of course, the money's gone. And the problem with fraud is it's the loss as much as anything, isn't it? That is the centre of the crime. And if you've lost your life savings and they've gone for good, the fact that Charlie's banged up in chokey for the next 20 years is of no consequence. You've got no pension now. You've had to sell your house. That's not coming back. So once the money's gone, as I say, it's too late for the victim, and we need to stop the fraud and get a conviction before that's happened. And that's what allowed us to do that. I mean, equivalent legislation exists in other jurisdictions. So I would say that has helped the fight against financial crime so much more and made it so much more effective in terms of criminal sanctions, that sort of thing. And that and the Proceeds of Crime Act, of course, which gives you the ability to seize funds if you haven't got an adequate explanation of where you got them from. That's pretty amazing, very powerful. So the legislation that's come in has made things a lot easier and a lot better for the victims as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have done some of that work as enforcement professionals in terms of proceeds of crime. And one of the things that always staggers me about that is that people will say, oh, well, if you do this, if you take this person's house, or if you go into this person's house and take their goods, then could be repercussions. And that is, I think that's the sinister side of fraud, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it's an underground activity with dubious people running it. And therefore, I mean, when we go in, we're going under a court order. So no one is above the law, right? I imagine that for people running businesses, I don't know what level, you can tell me, but what level of size of business you can be defrauded. I guess it's any size of business, but it must be scary to uncover a fraud in your business and then try and call in the police. Is that what you do? You ring the police, and how do you alert the authorities that there's been a fraud? How does that work?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, you're absolutely right. If you haven't got a plan before it happens, I liken it to a fire in many ways. If you didn't have fire exits and a fire response plan, of fire extinguishers and fire marshals in your company, you didn't wait, or you waited until the first fire before you realised, oh, perhaps I should have got some of that. That's what fraud's like. But we don't have, a lot of companies, even big ones, don't have that risk. They don't have the fire extinguishers in place. So they don't have the exit plans. And of course, the fire that is fraud just figuratively burns the business down.
So they're not anticipating a fraud, and therefore they're not risk assessing for it. And they've got gaps. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, really why we wanted you to come on today and explain that to, or at least highlight that risk to businesses so that they can contact you and find out how they can plug those gaps, right? So on that theme then, I mean, if a business owner or a group of directors, board of directors, had to sort of do one thing to protect themselves, what would be your magic bullet?
In a word, awareness. Carry out regular awareness training for yourself, your staff, as you say, the board. Your staff are your eyes and ears of your organisation and for you. They're also your first line of defence, of course. So if they know what to look for, how to respond, then you've got the best defence possible. Now, statistically, over 50% of fraud is uncovered by staff at all levels, but by staff. So if they're not trained, then you'll risk not detecting half the frauds attempts that are made against you, at least until it's too late. And it also ensures you set the right tone for your organisation. It goes back to my earlier point about tone from the top.
Yeah.
And that's got the additional benefit of protecting you against the biggest threat as well. Of course, the biggest threat to you is your staff. It's sad, but it's understandable. It's easy for someone within your organisation or within your zone of influence, as it were, to defraud you because they've got access to the premises already. They've got knowledge of your IT systems, your procedures and your processes. If they know that you take it seriously and you'll do something about it and there's a plan in place, then they're going to be incredibly less likely to even attempt to defraud you as well. So awareness throughout the company has two effects: protects you from the outside and the inside, and it gives you that line of defense that you wouldn't otherwise have. So it's vital. Yeah.
It's a sad fact that you do have to be so aware of who you are working with in your team, and you could be a smallish team or an extended team, but a wide-ranging company. But background checks on staff and doing due diligence on hiring staff, I think, and I think for people that are listening to this and they go, what are you talking about? I don't do anything naughty. I'm a good girl or boy or whatever. The fact is that it's not about you. It's about protecting the organisation. And if you want to be a team player, then you've got to submit yourself to those checks, haven't you?
Absolutely.
You've got to be
particularly the financial services, but generally more and more across businesses now that have adopt a very robust know your customer policy where they do background checks, etc., and to a lesser or greater extent with business partners. But how many people have a know your staff policy? We take people on based on their CV, which we may give a cursory glance to, have one interview perhaps. They look a decent chap. I could see myself, having a drink after work with them and etc. etc. Yeah, your job's yours. Congratulations. Who are they?
Yeah.
What's their background? It just doesn't happen as much as it should. But there you go.
No. Well, I mean, we work in the, one of our solutions is legal, and so under that solution, we're under the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and of course, we are checking clients for anti-money laundering quite deeply in terms of who we're contracting with for services. But touch wood, we've been lucky with our staff, but in other parts of Shergroup, we have to background check security officers, as you would expect, more so in the UK than in the US at the moment, although I'm sure that will change in due course. But it is interesting that we could be missing part, a gap could be in our organisations on fraud just because we are not taking that step in terms of background checking and our staff. And to be a team player, I think you need to submit yourself to that scrutiny. Yeah, but is there such a thing as a typical fraudster? I mean, I bet you see all sorts.
Yeah. Yes, they look just like this. No.
No, I don't think you say it.
The statistics will tell you that the average fraudster is a member of staff, mostly middle management sort of level, male, of course. He'll be 45 to 55, which cuts me out, but I'm not saying which end of the age bracket that is. Been with the organisation something like 5 to 10 years. There'll be nothing special in terms of performance, but they won't be underperforming. In reality, if you want to know what a typical fraudster looks like, then after this interview, or when you finish watching this recording, go out into the street, your nearest town or city or village, and just make a note of everyone that walks past, because that's what they look like. They look like ordinary people.
You'll be able to narrow it down then.
Well, that's what I'm coming to. The thing that you can look at is their behaviours and not what they're like now when they change. Because when people do something naughty, they change their behaviour, and that's what you look for. You're looking for changes in habits, and there are certain things you can look at, like suddenly not taking holiday, suddenly keeping long hours, maybe disappearing occasionally during the day, all the various things you can look for that they never did before. Because if somebody joins your company, if you're talking about staff, they don't come in on day one and go, right, where can I get some fraud? They start with an ordinary job, and then something will trigger it. It's about motive. and that's my thing. Motivators is what I'm all about, really. And the fraud triangle, which is a bit like the fire triangle with fuel and oxygen and heat energy. But with the fraud triangle, you have the three sides of opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. And those three things need to be in place. Obviously, as a company, the only thing you can really control is the opportunity, but you can do something about the others as well. If you want to, I can help you with those. So one of the things I use is a tool called the motivational mapping, which is an amazing tool that identifies individuals' motivators. And it gives a great overview of your staff and gives you the power to be able to appeal to them as individuals and a team in a way that, as I say, appeals directly to their personal motivators. It's a very powerful management, investigative and coaching resource. So look at the people, what fires them up, and look at their behaviours. So in that sense, yes, you could. There is no such thing as a typical fraudster, but that doesn't mean you can't identify somebody who may be in the zone, should we say.
Yeah, in the
so
zone.
That's of a real help.
Yes, that's definitely true. I mean, is it about them being, I mean, I guess they cover their tracks. I mean, is it about them being less than honest, less than truthful, or is it something more than that? I mean, if they're clever, they'll be trying to cover their tracks, won't they?
Yeah, but by being clever and covering their tracks, therein lies an indicator of their activities. It's a bit like a murder where somebody's forensically aware. The fact that they're forensically aware tells you a little bit about their background. So even if they don't leave fingerprints and footprints and things like that, and you detect that somebody's doing this, it helps you narrow down what's going on. So it's a little bit like that. So if people are covering their tracks, I remember when I started out, probably when I first started work, and we were looking at some accounts, and we gave it wherever it was. I think it was a high street bank in the UK. My first job, it was probably with them, and we're being shown the handwritten accounts that have been kept. Not at the time, not that quite that old, but they were showing you this old thing. And I think somebody commented on how scruffy they were. They expected in the old days to all have your handwriting. He said, no, he said one of the biggest indicators of falsified accounts is perfectly kept accounts, because people would do all the stuff in pencil and siphon off their bit and then write it beautifully in the ledger. So if you saw a beautifully kept of accounts, you sent the bank inspectors into that branch because you knew something was up.
There you go.
So sometimes they're too clever and they're covering themselves too much.
Yeah.
The curious incident with the dog in the night.
But you mentioned motivational mapping. I saw from your LinkedIn profile, because you've got a great profile on LinkedIn. I actually saw that we're University of London alumni. So I was there in 1983. So I don't want to date you, but I did my law degree there.
Fantastic.
But from the point of view of I've forgotten what I was going to ask you now. What was I asking you? That's a good thing on a talk show thing, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
But let me ask you this. Motivational mapping. That's what I was going to ask. Yes. So motivational mapping. I mean, you're one of under 800 people in the world that can do motivational mapping, and I have actually had myself mapped by one of our mutual contacts. So, but for you, I mean, how do you think that lends itself to helping solve this dilemma of identifying fraud in business? Is it, what's that tool going to do?
Two things. It works on the individual basis, in that if you suspect someone, or say you suspect someone, you understand someone, even before you suspect, if you understand what motivates them. And if somebody comes up who is perhaps something like a builder, which you will know what that is. So if you don't know what that is, contact me and arrange a map. But one of the things that appeals to the builder in terms of motivator is cash, money. So if you know someone's a builder, then I'm not saying you then watch what they're doing, but you know that to appeal to them, to keep them positively motivated, you appeal to that. Whereas someone else who's perhaps more of a spirit type person, who's more interested in what their job is bringing to other people and how it's helping the world, you appeal to that. But the strength of it when it comes to counter fraud work is that it helps you build a very positively motivated team. Now, a really positively motivated team will do anything for each other. It's I mean, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. A proper, motivated, supportive team is what sent guys over the top in First World War. They didn't do it for king or country. They did it because they had a team that was supporting each other. To this day, in the military, if you have a unit that is very supportive like that, you can take them anywhere and do anything in the most extreme. The same thing applies in an office, factory, shop. So if you get the motivators and they're all motivated, they ain't going to want to dump on their mates, basically. So they will be more positive at work and so much less motivated to go off the path, because fraudsters work on their own. So if you've got a good motivated team, there's not going to be a fraudster in it.
There's no room for a fraudster.
There's no room, and they'll stand out a mile. So it works on two bases, and I think the second is the most powerful one when it comes to building an anti-fraud environment and a positive team, definitely.
And in terms of your and using this tool to basically help you build, the protections that organisations need, you run a consultancy now for motivational mapping, don't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that Adastral? How do you pronounce that?
Adastral Consulting Limited.
Adastral,
yeah. So it's a large part. It's become quite a large part of the business. That's sort of almost now not exactly a separate issue, because it's got so many legs that and possibilities in terms of business and people management. But it started off as a tool alongside things like my statement analysis work, which it is really powerful.
And is that a UK centric business, or is that something you can take across jurisdictions?
Oh gosh, across jurisdictions. I tend to. It depends on what I'm doing, but if it's English speaking, I can go myself anyway. And my French is a little, But apart from that, pretty much most things transfer. There are some differences in terms of cultures. What I do depending on what the role is, what I would do quite often is I have contacts, and I've got people that I can use in other countries that know the lay of the land, etc. So, I mean, I don't do this sort of thing anymore, but in a previous life, when I used to do corporate investigations, I was with another company, we would use local people to do a lot of the work. Yeah. So if it's surveillance, for instance, there's no way I'm going to go to, I don't know, Singapore and do surveillance, or the Caribbean. I would have to employ someone over there, because I would stick out like a sore thumb. There he is, 6 foot something tall with his size 9 boots. And
but isn't the art of it? I mean, I'm interested in this because I'm interested in companies and businesses that can work, through technology, can work anywhere in the world. Language and culture, as important elements of that, and of course, one has to cater for that. I mean, that's certainly Shergroup's journey is not to be limited to the shores of the UK. No. Blighty being home always, but always pushing the borders out for Shergroup. And it's great to hear that your business is doing the same. I had another business owner last week doing the same thing, and I just think that this just gives us so much scope. And of course, we do have to cater for different things, but that's all the ingenuity, isn't it, that you bring to your business model in terms of facilitating different language, different culture, but still being able to deliver that baseline service, which will I guess, sort out fraud anywhere in the world.
Yeah, well, it has to. Criminals don't have barriers; they don't have borders.
No, exactly.
If a client engages me in London, and all of a sudden I find out that some money's gone to Italy or Australia or the US or wherever, I can't just say, "Sorry, mate, I don't go south of the river." You have to get someone else. I have to follow the money wherever it goes.
Yeah.
So there is no. It's really funny in a way. So, do you work abroad? I work on the planet Earth at the moment, and that's only because humans haven't colonized Mars yet. Then I'll be working on Mars and Earth. So the criminals will go where the money is. You've got to go where the criminals go. Yeah.
No, I'm all for it. I think it's and I think it's fantastic that UK and US companies are in demand to deliver these types of services outside of their own shores. Of course, there are other countries as well, but of course, the common denominator here is language. and we shouldn't underestimate the.
It's funny actually you should say that, because a little while ago I had a case that started off in Exeter in Devon in the UK, and ended up seizing a house in Florida and a boat over there. So, and that was just a couple of sort of office workers basically who worked for a major company over here. And it's, as I say, it started with funny enough, it started with some awareness training. I trained some people down there, and as always happens, within a couple of weeks, the phone goes, is that David? You were down here giving a talk, yeah? And I know what's coming next. I found a couple of suspicious transactions. I said, okay, right, which system's it on? Tap, tap, tap. Okay, leave it with me. Got onto my IT people. Said, can I have a dump of all the payments? These are the criteria. Can you send me it? Within an hour, I got a spreadsheet with thousands of transactions on there. Did a little bit of digging around and a bit of backwards engineering, as I call it. And by the end of the day, I think I had about £300,000 of suspicious transactions. It was £800,000 worth that they got out in 5 months. With controls in place, but the controls had a floor limit, and all of these payments were like £5 under the 2,500 floor limit.
Right. Yeah.
And as I say, it ended up in Florida in the end. So, you can't stop at Lizard Point and say, sorry, it's across the other side of the pond.
No, just want to make sure that we understand that not all fraudsters come to Florida. They could go anywhere in the world.
It just the way we were speaking, that's something you thought,
yeah. But I suppose if you want to get to sunny climes, then this is a popular place.
It's a lovely place to go. If I was defrauding,
Yeah, I think it's a busy place. Number one place in the US at the moment to move to.
I think so. And near the Caribbean as well. So
yeah, everyone go to Montana. There's plenty of room up there. So don't come down here. We're getting crowded. Okay, so that's fascinating. Now, I suppose just to sum up, then, I mean, what aspects of work do you prefer? I mean, is it prevention, detection, or recovery, or sanctions?
Oh, gosh, well, they've all got their pluses and their minuses, I suppose. They can all be frustrating in a way. Recovery and sanctions is rewarding, definitely. Seeing someone, marched off, handing a check over to someone, here's your pension money back, fantastic. That's the spirit in me. Yeah. Getting a good result, that's great. Seeing the perpetrator brought to book. But it is difficult sometimes to find and recover those losses, because money can disappear. We know where it's gone, but once it's been transferred into something else, it's very difficult, and particularly if it's gone abroad in certain jurisdictions. And of course, by then it's too late, quote unquote. Detection is really interesting. It appeals to my love of solving puzzles. Goes back to childhood watching, Z Cars and Dixon and Doc Green and things like that. Always wanted to be a copper, sort of thing. But it can be an incredibly tedious and slow process. It's not all as exciting as Inspector Morse and Poirot and Miss Marple and all that sort of stuff. Very few poisonings in fraud, thankfully. But it is satisfying. Yeah, it's very hard work, but it is a science which appeals to the scientist in me. And you need to be evidence-led. It's real investigation is not, as I say, it's not an exciting TV movie or drama. It's hard graft. I suppose if I'm really, really going to say what do I enjoy the most when I do it, and I know I'm going to enjoy it, I know it's not going to be tedious, I know I know I'm going to get a result, is the prevention side, which probably surprises most people. But nobody's been affected yet. Well, sometimes I get called in after they have, but that's a different story. It involves meeting a lot of new people, which I love. It involves presenting and training, which are passions of mine. I call it my stand-up routine. As you know, I like to keep my training sessions very lively and very enjoyable and fun. You need to with fraud sometimes.
I was going to say with fraud, you're quite unique.
It can become quite negative, quite scary, and delivered in the wrong way. I've been to some fraud things and I've thought, oh goodness, you're making this so boring. I also like working with boards. That is great as well, and management teams to put the policy documents in place and the response plan, and doing the fraud risk assessments. And I always ensure I leave having built a strong organisation, or helped build a strong organisation that are aware of the risks and have a robust defence in place. And I walk away and I've got all aspects. I've had fun, I've got a result, I've made improvements, and people go away happy, which is what it's all about. Whereas, yeah. So I suppose, that's my answer. It'll be the prevention side of things, really, which is strange.
That's very satisfying, isn't it? I mean, that must be very satisfying in the role. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I did say at the beginning of the interview, I was going to ask you about Doctor Who, because so just tell me a little, or for all us Whovians, just give us a little morsel of, trivia that you want to share with us.
A little bit of trivia. Oh, I could tell you so much. When I was younger, I really got into Doctor Who and joined the Appreciation Society. So I was a fan alongside Peter Capaldi, for instance, at conventions and people like that. I once bought John Pertwee a vodka and tonic in a hotel, had a chat with him. He was an amazing guy, John Pertwee.
He was lovely.
I met all bar William Hartnell of the old Doctors, lots of the companions, absolutely lovely people. And yes, I've got a long scarf. I've still got it. I don't wear it anymore. But yeah, what can I tell you about Doctor Who? Gosh, I think it's one of those things that it's gone beyond the TV program now. It's now part of our culture. It's like Sherlock Holmes and Miss Marple. It's like Robin Hood. It's part of our makeup, and I think it's just woven socially into British society, and of course across the world now. It's what, millions, hundreds of millions of viewers around the world. Eagerly tuning in.
Great British export.
It is. It's very British, and yet it's at the same time it's not. It's everything to everyone, isn't it? Everyone's got their favourite Doctor. Everyone's got the Doctor they don't like, their favourite monster, the monster they don't like. They've got their favourite. Everyone says it's not as good as. Tom Baker was my Doctor, John Pertwee, Tom Baker. Although I do remember Patrick Troughton. And then, of course, the others came along, and I'd grown up, and the child in me sort of gets squashed down, doesn't it, a little bit? And I don't think it's good. But I meet people that think Sylvester McCoy is the best thing. I meet people that think that Jodie Whittaker and all sorts. And I look at it, and I look at little kids, and I look at them now, and it brings a tear to my eye, because I remember being there on a Saturday afternoon, not quite hiding behind the settee, but eager, waiting for when that music. Well, it was usually grandstand music or World of Sport, whatever. My dad and my brother, because I was not into sport. Then you'd sit there eagerly, and it'd be like, in a minute. Oh no, it's the news. Oh, it's Basil Brush, or it's whatever it was. And then it would come on for 25 minutes. You were transported somewhere amazing. And then when the theme music kicked in at the end, it was like, I just want to get next week out the way. And we don't get that anymore, do we? We binge watch now. We watch an entire series of Game of Thrones in 3 weekends, and it's just.
Well, I like both. I mean, I could reminisce. My dad got me into all of that. He was a great Doctor Who fan. I spent most of my time behind the settee when the Yeti was on. But he loved Star Trek as well. But my favourite Doctor Who is Matt Smith, who with Amelia Pond when they ate fish fingers and custard.
Yeah, I must admit, I love Matt Smith as well. He was just otherworldly enough, similar to Tom Baker. If somebody said there were 2 Doctor Who's, we're going to reveal the secret now, 2 of the actors that played Doctor Who actually were aliens, which 2 would it be? You'd probably pick Matt Smith and Tom Baker, wouldn't you?
I think he's rocking up in the Game of Thrones prequel, isn't he, Matt Smith?
Is he? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so he's going to be one of the dragon family. So So that's fantastic that you've got this lighter side of life to the day job.
You have to.
I think that's great. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on the sofa today.
You're welcome.
Your company website, Adastral Consulting, that will be in the show notes. So if anybody picks up on this video, and you can obviously share it on your own channels. And then you've got your personal coaching website at davidrjefferies.com. So again, I'd encourage people to follow you, find you on LinkedIn. I found you today easily enough, and just connect with you. And for all things to do with fraud prevention, and motivational mapping, and Doctor Who.
Absolutely.
I hope you get some Whovian fans after all of this. So Anyway, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you about what is a bit of a dry old subject if it's not your thing, right? But it's necessary to introduce you to people like David so that you can really think about that in your own organisation. And that's what this whole Shergroup on the Sofa series is about your business and introducing people to you that can help you solve some of the dilemmas that you face as business owners. And if you're interested in learning more about Shergroup, you can visit our website at shergroup.com. We've got our own Facebook channel, every channel that we can, we're operating on really to bring you news and views from Shergroup and our terrific community. So David, thank you so much for your time today. And I say, come and see us again in the future when you've got a great case study to share, perhaps, on how you put the world to right and,
save the universe.
Save the universe, absolutely.
My sonic screwdriver.
There you go, sonic screwdriver. All you Whovian fans. I'm going to put that in the show notes because that's a keyword. It's going to get some people looking at this video. There you go. Oh, if my son was here, he'd know what one is that one. Yeah,
I got that one for you because that's Matt Smith's one.
All right. As you can tell, I'm not that much of a Whovian fan. I would know the sonic screwdriver. All right. Thank you so much, David. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you, Claire. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Shergroupie podcast. To join our Shergroupie community, subscribe by going to our website at www.shergroup.com. Keep up with the latest Shergroup news across all our main channels, including YouTube, LinkedIn, and across all social media. Stay connected and begin building more business relationships.